Electrocast.
Este episodio es presentado por Honda. Descubra la nueva Honda Passport Trail Sport todoterreno. La Passport más todoterreno que Honda haya imaginado jamás. Esta Passport cuenta con mayor altura al suelo, barras de techo en todas sus versiones y neumáticas especialmente diseñados para cualquier terreno. Además, disfruta todos tus viajes con el control de clima de 3 zonas, techo panorámico y opciones como asientos delanteros con calefacción y ventilación. Conoce más en honda.com/Passport.
Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now, this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or Whatever Movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host Iris and I'm here with my older brother
Wesley.
Today we're talking Academy Award Best Picture nominee from 2024, I'm Still Here.
And boy, this little underdog from Brazil, the first Brazilian movie ever nominated for Best Picture, the second Brazilian actress ever nominated for an Academy Award. Do you know who the first Brazilian actress nominated for an Academy Award was?
No, tell me.
The mom of this lady who played the older version of her.
Oh, who played the older version of her? Wait, what?
Yeah, at the end.
Oh, really?
That was her mom. And she's like, everybody says, the makeup is so good. How did you do that? And she's like, that's my mom.
It's like that old person in A League of Their Own being like, how did they find that old Gina Davis?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was convinced that that was Gina Davis because I was a kid and because I watched A League of Their Own, which how many kids are watching I'm Still Here?
Yeah, not many. So I was going to talk to my friend Luisa, who is a Brazilian screenwriter and friend who would have an intelligent opinion on I'm Still Here, but she hasn't seen it yet. So I'm just going to go on my own.
Wait, you're not a Brazilian expert? How many times have you been to Brazil?
Well, precisely as many times as you have.
Yeah, that was one time. But Kelly and I went to Croatia about 5 years ago. And as you do, you try to look up stuff, what to do and what not to do in a foreign country. And the number one thing kept coming up. It said, whatever you do, don't mention the war. They're still sensitive. It's been 20 years, but people don't want to talk about the war. And I was like, make sure not to discuss the war. And as such, I didn't learn about the war. And I did not know about a Brazilian dictatorship and this Cold War era control over the citizens and the murder and kidnapping and disappearances and nullifying of politicians, lawyers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the setting of Brazil in 1970 under military dictatorship was my first cue that maybe this was real. Then again, I thought Amelia Perez was based on a true story, and The Brutalist and Nickel Boys, all of which were not based on true stories.
Nickel Boys a little bit, maybe.
Inspired, right? But not based on true stories. And so I was definitely watching for how this played out, how closely they were going to adhere to what I thought was a true story. They spent a lot of time in a happier place, Brazil, despite it being under a military dictatorship. But yeah, the ending suggests true story really happened, real survivors, real victims of this really tragic story.
The key word, I think, though, for true story is story, and the idea that we're revisiting this particular moment in history that was recorded and is now being retold in dramatic fashion, dramatic also being a key word, because there's story, and we want to see exactly why. We got beach life and Top Gun volleyball, and then they found a dog, and the dog was really cute, and then the trucks came, and you're like, uh-oh, something is happening, that I guess was setting up for the devastation of this nuclear family thing when, what's his name, Schneider rolls in.
I knew that the other foot was going to fall because the family life was a little bit too perfect. They were a little bit too happy. The parents were a little bit too loving, and the kids maybe a little bit too well behaved. Then again, the kids are really well behaved kind of throughout the years. This seems like a very functional family, even despite the trauma that they experienced. But I knew that things were going to go south. There was an ominous tone somehow to the otherwise happy seeming slices of life. I thought that the eldest daughter, Vero, by the way, I'm just going to use American English pronunciations for all of these names.
Please do.
I thought that maybe she would play a more significant role given how much time they spent developing her story. But then she just kind of gets sent to England and doesn't play a really key role during the kidnapping or at the aftermath, everything to follow. But what was I saying? Yeah. Back to you, Wes.
You're not allowed to kill dogs in movies. I don't care about the symbolism. Do the Mary Shelley thing. Be like the weather is what makes it ominous, not the killing of the dog, which of course is when we knew that Dad wasn't coming back. True story, very horrible.
The dog didn't totally die in vain. This is a very quiet movie and a very restrained performance by Fernanda Torres. But after the dog's death is the only time she raises her voice in this movie. Did you notice that?
Yes, where she goes and yells at the dudes, traffic style, who are monitoring their house.
Not in the torture chamber, interrogation room, not when she finds out that her husband is dead. She never breaks her composure except after the dog dies.
Restrained. What else did you call this performance?
Quiet.
Boring? I mean, everyone is shocked.
It's a slow burn.
On social media and on the YouTubes and everything, a lot of surprise that of all the movies, Sing Sing, all these other movies that could have been nominated, could have gotten the coveted spot for a nomination, I'm Still Here, they were like, whoa! But in terms of conveying story, the death of story and its trajectory is to be like, so a thing happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And maybe the word is passive for this movie, for this performance, because nothing really happened on screen. It was the absence of the husband character. It was the absence of the daughter, who was positioned up front to have a noteworthy role and then disappeared to school. The absence of finding out what happened, of seeing the son's accident. We were kind of picking up the pieces a little bit like she was to kind of mirror her emotional journey of not having closure, of not understanding who was getting their head dunked in the barrel in the torture facility or whatever, of not knowing who it was that was screaming. Was that her daughter? Was her daughter dead? We're all finding out that stuff after the fact. It was like sitting backwards in a vehicle or on a train and watching the stuff that you've gone past. There's no anticipation and there's no clear sense of direction that makes it exciting.
It's almost like the fact that we were with Fernanda Torres' character, Eunice, the entire time, right, is supposed to create this isolation, claustrophobia in a different way, of course, than it did in Nickel Boys. But what I'm saying is this lack of dramatic irony, the fact that we were stuck with the Eunice character, kind of meant there was a lack of drama. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. But were we supposed to be more dialed in? Were we supposed to be examining the looks on everyone's faces like I personally was with Honora? Were we supposed to be ascribing significance? Like, okay, they've been there a long time. Remember when the gangster, Schneider, and everybody did that shift change, like in the middle of the night?
Right. She comes running downstairs and she's like...
Yeah, all of a sudden there were stirrings and like something is happening, but nothing was happening. It was minutia. And were we meant to be carried along dramatically by this idea, something is happening and we're with her running downstairs and out of breath, hoping that there's been some news or development and all we got was a shift change? Is that an effective means of sustaining drama?
Well, it's an effective means of telling a story of a person who's being strung along and taking us along for that ride. I think a microcosm of what you're saying is in the title. I Am Still Here suggests that maybe the dad survives. Maybe he's still here somewhere, not there with his family, but still here. But nope, dead.
Well, yeah, I would have named this movie Cold Souffle because I was like, there's no way he's coming back for that souffle. That souffle, this movie's like that souffle. It's just going to it's all round and bubbly and like a whole thing, but you realize it's a little bit empty inside and eventually it collapses under its own weight.
The souffle was definitely symbolic. I don't think it was in that way, though. The title may have been intending to mislead us that Dad survives, but I think it's referring to his ghost and the ghosts of this movie that are kind of haunting and living in between the scenes of the dramatic story that the filmmakers are putting on display.
You're suggesting there's substance, that there's something between the molecules in space. What do you got? What do the ghosts look like?
That this is what it means to live after the Titanic sinks. To survive a great tragedy where some kind of carry on and some are completely disabled by the experience and unable to carry on, and then some people manage to carry on and thrive.
It's the way that the position that we were put into where it was a forced perspective, a limited forced perspective. We can't see beyond what Fernando Torres' character sees. There's no insight. We don't cut away to... Do we ever cut away from her character for insight or information?
Do we ever follow any of the other family members?
Right. It's obviously told from her perspective. This movie is way more about her than it is the husband. You remember Kafka's The Trial?
Nope.
I don't think it would be spoiling it to say that we have no idea why that dude is on trial. Were you reading between the lines? Kelly picked up and she was like, I think Rubens or whatever. I think the husband is in on it. They didn't just show up at his door and he was bewildered like the wife was. Like, wait, what is it? Who are you? What are you doing here? He knew why they were there, even if he wasn't communicating the danger that he was so obviously in to the kids. You know, go on upstairs. And he was trying to protect them because hopefully things were going to be okay. I think he knew that nothing was going to be okay.
Like he made his bed and he was going to lie in it?
Well, they talked about how, yes, he was part of a network of going against the regime and stuff, and how this other lady and the other guy who showed up in the book, she's like, what is that lady doing there? She's that nice old lady or whatever. And they were all a part of a system that Schneider and the dudes narrowed in on to take them into custody, trying to locate the agitators and isolate them. And nobody knows what's happening. And we didn't know what was happening. And I felt the frustration, but I didn't really feel like the question needed to be, I felt like it should have been answered, but I wasn't digging for the subversive clues.
I knew that it was a dangerous time. I knew that he was doing dangerous things. His colleague corroborates that they were part of the resistance, that they had a responsibility because they were privileged, because they were powerful and well-connected, and because they were conscientious patriots. And I knew that she didn't know. I also knew that Rubens had a lot to lose. He had this beautiful family. It seemed like a thriving architectural or engineering business with current projects. It had to have been a calculated risk that he took to say, you know, I have all of this to lose, but I'm only sending letters to dissidents who want to hear from their families, and it's a calculated risk worth taking despite all I have to lose.
Man.
But, you know, as I'm saying this, I'm actually proving your point, because this is all based on conjecture. This is all based on me trying to piece together Rubens's motivations, trying to understand what he might have been thinking to get himself into the situation. I'm reading all of this into their performance, like when the people come to take him. And like in Eunice's composure. So, yeah, basically what you're saying is I pieced the story together.
Well,
Lowe's knows that free is just better. That's why MyLowe's Rewards is free to join. As a member, you earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases, get exclusive free gifts, and earn free shipping at Silver Key status, all on top of weekly member-only deals. Don't wait. Join MyLowe's Rewards for free today and start saving more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out, it was my coffee mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai Iced Coffee Flavored Creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Good job, because you almost had me convinced until you collapsed under the weight of your own argument, because I was like, maybe what is reading between the lines that I couldn't be bothered to do for me is Iris just coming up with a succinct synopsis to be able to justify and talk about this movie in an intelligent way. It didn't inform us any more than the wife was really informed for, on her husband's doings. And it also didn't, maybe this is my failing, but it didn't encourage me or inspire me to research the dictatorship of Brazil in circa 1970. All I cared about was the husband and was forced to follow the wife in her very understated caring about the husband in the face of her day-to-day life and her kids, who were always like, "Where's Dad?" And she's like, "It's cool." And Fernando Torres reported that every one of her crying scenes, of which there were multiple, were cut out because she's too strong for that. Look at the amazing things that this lady did. And she did, at my age, stopped what she was doing with 5 kids and got a law degree, became a lawyer, became very active. And she did all that in the face of tragedy, basically starting from nothing. But we didn't really see any of that. What we got, and I'm Still Here, was stuff happening to her.
What did Eunice really have at her disposal to do? She was already under pretty heavy surveillance, horribly interrogated and held, detained away from her family for, at least a couple weeks, according to the hash marks on the wall. What could she really have done? It seemed like she tried to subvert in the best way possible. She, lawyered up. She did the magazine spread, got her law degree to pursue justice for other people who endure injustice in Brazil. She, in my opinion, seemed to do what she could do to right a wrong in a really uncontrollable situation. When you say that the filmmakers don't give us a lot of context for the political situation in Brazil, I think, again, conjecture, the filmmakers made this for a Brazilian audience. It feels very authentic and not expository to an international audience in that way, at least so much so that Brazil put it forth as their pick at the Academy Awards. And I think it just kind of became this sleeper wild card for Best Picture.
Yeah, but that's so weird, though, that it would be embraced culturally, nationally by Brazil, considered it was filmed in English in Malibu, subbing for Sugarbush Mountain, and they dubbed it in Brazilian. Or whatever.
No, they didn't. Stop.
But you're right. It wasn't meant for us. And going back to what you were saying earlier, what she could do with the limited ability at her disposal, she did really well. And you could see that because you're right, keeping her family as coherent as possible, as shielded and guarded for the horrific disappearance of their dad, which would be just life-shattering or whatever. She did her best while using what limited resources she had to become informed. You could see just a hint of that in all her keeping it under the surface when she made up the lie about him being diabetic and needing the medicine to try to get some information.
Right.
That was a little bit conniving, and she's in a way ceasing to be so naive and subjugated. She's taking some initiative within her limited, sort of power to do so. That was interesting.
I mean, I get it. Authentic is today's buzzword, and everyone bandies it about all loosely, like the word genius. But for whatever it's worth, this movie felt very authentic to me. And a lot of that has to do with her performance and her character working within the limitations of her context.
So let me ask you this. As a South American nation goes, Brazil, massive country, is the role of women, particularly in 1970, one of less power by design? She couldn't get the money without her husband. It seemed like she was sort of on her own. Today, she probably wouldn't be in that situation if it were in Southern California or whatever. It seems like the perseverance, endurance, maybe even heroism of her character is that she was a woman who really transcended what was her little niche in life to become as prominent as she was in the 1970 context.
I didn't really feel that aspect of her limitation. I didn't feel like being a woman was necessarily a handicap to her during this trial. If anything, it was kind of her luck. He probably left her out of it, kept her in the dark in order to keep her safe, in order for her to be genuinely innocent. And they maybe also kind of went easy on her because she was a woman and maybe somehow less of a threat. In a way, it was kind of like it was helpful to her. And the subversive part is that as a matriarch, as the mother of her kids, she was able to resist the regime by picking up and carrying on. Yeah, they had a little bit tuck tail and moved to Sao Paulo, where she had family support to take care of the kids while she pursued her law degree. Yes, she might have been crippled a little bit from lack of resources, especially since she couldn't presumably access them until she had a death certificate, which she didn't get apparently for many, many years. There were some obstacles there, but I never felt like she was limited because she was a woman.
Man, look at us, or whatever movies, torch-bearing for gender dynamics in a role reversal kind of way. I was the one who was like, hey, she was a woman trying to rise up from the oppression of 1970s South American womanhood, culturally speaking. And you're like, yeah, but also, didn't they kind of go easy on her because she's a woman? That seems like something I would have said.
A listener commented that we're too alike on the Best Picture nominees, and they disagreed specifically with both of our opinions on Nosferatu. They didn't like it as much as we did, apparently.
I need to know who this they is.
Listener Jonathan Bailey from the Haunt Weekly podcast.
I need to have this listener picked up and interrogated.
Anyway, but it sounds like we are differing on this one.
I don't know about that. I'm just saying we're playing devil's advocate, I guess, in a way.
You think this was a quiet, nothing happened kind of movie that was kind of boring, and I think this was a quiet, nothing happens kind of movie that was really powerful.
Yeah, I think this was a quiet movie where if they were gonna give us drama, it didn't need to be the goddamn dog killed by the stupid car, stupid movie. That was very annoying. We got the pieces. We gleaned what happened and motivations from all the stuff after the fact. He's probably dead now, and we can see that because the dog is dead, and we can see that because their bright future was they sold it off in order to sustain themselves. They sold the dream property and stuff, and they fired the maid or whatever, who was an integral part of the family. I was saying about what it means to be a woman in 1970s Brazil, because this movie did, I feel like it adhered to certain traditions that were unclear to us. Kelly was like, is that a thing? Do you bury teeth in the sand? Like, that's got to have some cultural relevance that we didn't seem to understand.
I was worried. That's like, but this is a little bit like Santa Claus. Like, don't you not break the magic in a movie or any form, no matter what? Like, you can't out the Brazilian tooth fairy.
That's definitely the poster quote. But all this was showing was that this idea, the presentation of the thing, of the tooth fairy in Brazil or whatever, was an illusion. He was the tooth fairy, and he was called out for his shenanigans and persecuted for it. What does the tooth represent?
Well, maybe the fact that you didn't look up Brazilian tooth fairy lore.
And you did? Hit me. We've got a few minutes left in this record.
What I'm saying is the fact that this movie didn't prompt you to go in and research Brazilian tooth fairy lore maybe means that you didn't care enough. You weren't really invested enough in these characters to want to understand the fullness of their context.
Did you need it to jump forward to 1996 and then all the way to 2016? Did you need to track these characters through the ages to see how they progressed? Did that contribute to this, interminably long, at 2 hours and 20 minutes of nothing happening? My goodness, what are we doing? Did you need those, or would a card have sufficed? Hey, she went on to become a lawyer.
Well, it feels like nothing happened because the family was happy and intact, and the kids were, for the most part, very well behaved in the beginning of the movie before Rubens was abducted, and they were a loving family, cohesive, happy and mostly well-behaved after they received his death certificate. That's why it feels like nothing happened, because these people don't change. So in answer to your question, no, I don't think I needed to see it, how they succeeded and how they remained intact. If anything, it kind of hurt the story.
So that's what I'm getting at. You know what happens to happy people who finally get closure a million years later about their dad's and husband's death? They watch TV, and then they take a picture, and then they have to wheel really old mom outside. And if I know one thing, it's that grandmas in wheelchairs don't smile for family pictures or whatever. And I think we did get a card, right? The government admitted to the killing, but no one was arrested. And it's like, now it's a card of nothing happening. And it gets to, what it was obvious that we saw him carted away in an official capacity, or at least, this was the regime or whatever putting on these moves, but still, we didn't get any new information, I don't think, from the card or from the subsequent future, albeit in the past, scenes. All I got was tracking the years. I was like, okay, so this is how much longer? Is the mom still? Yep, there's the mom. She's still alive or whatever. Now, which daughter? And okay, the son, he wrote the book. He wrote the book that this was based on? Which daughter is which? Is this the one that was abducted? I couldn't tell. And that's all I was doing. I wasn't trying to piece together the story with new clues or with revelations. All I was getting was trying to do what I had done this entire movie, was examining the minutia and trying to determine if it was important.
Yeah, I don't think that your ability to track hair over the course of many years should determine how well you understand or enjoy I'm Still Here. But I was definitely like, that's the curly-haired daughter. Oh, that's the hippie one. Wait a second. They only had one son, so that has to be him. There was a lot of mental energy spent trying to piece the story together.
But a lot of this movie was like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, in that there was a lot not happening, and yet it was extremely expensive for those avenues full of period-appropriate cars and stuff. And I was like, man, they are spending a fortune on nothing happening.
Well, if nothing happening means that they were carrying on in a dignified, heroic fashion, and that should be quietly inspirational and powerful to us, then I think they succeeded.
Carry On in the book, I'm Still Here, written by that dude, available now at bookstores everywhere.
Are you recommending it?
No, because this movie didn't inspire me to read that book, because I'm like, that's going to be a boring book. And that is my ultimate review on I'm Still Here, which, while I think Fernando Torres was great and restrained and did get a chance to act and did get a chance to cry a whole bunch and did get a chance to film her descent into an Alzheimer's gripped reality leading up to the portrayal that her mother gave of her in older life. All that stuff was cut because what was important was not seeing the stuff on screen, but rather, I don't know what was important for this filmmaker. But it was kind of boring.
I watched I'm Still Here late at night. Not a good time to start I'm Still Here, much like it's not a good time to start The Brutalist. And while Brian snoozed on the couch behind me, I was pretty gripped by I'm Still Here. I found it to be a quietly powerful, oddly gripping movie about where, I agree, not much happens.
Wow.
But it seems thematically appropriate for living with the specter of your abducted, politically rebellious husband.
Fernando Torres, rightly so, was awarded for her work and was undoubtedly the centerpiece of this movie, gave a strong, measured performance by necessity, wasn't flashy and was still powerful. Just her, though, because otherwise I'm like, whoa, Best Picture, whoa, Brazilian language, making history, gotta be good. And when I approach it from that perspective and I'm like, oh, this is boring, then I give it an unfair shake. But while I was giving it that unfair shake, I was kind of bored.
Kelly Ray liked it though, right?
We're in the season where she has to suffer through not happy movies, and she would rather watch Apple TV shows. But we've talked about several Apple TV movies where things kind of don't happen. Are you sure this wasn't made by, how do you say apple in Portuguese?
Not manzana, but probably like manzana or something like with a...
Are you sure this wasn't made by Apple?
You heard about the new Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot?
That's been in talks for years.
With Sarah Michelle Gellar and Chloe Zhao?
Chloe Zhao?
Yep.
Okay. Not a lot happened in the Eternals. Not a lot Talk to Brian. Not a lot happened in Nomadland. But sure, Chloe Zhao, if that ever comes to pass, we'll probably watch that. And I'm Still Here has been in gestation for at least half a decade. They've been this cast and crew, this filmmaker has been talking about bringing this book to the screen, had met with the son and did a lot of research and all that stuff. And I don't know why, because it was boring.
And that's Wes's official rating, boring, and you got a good from Iris. And that's our discussion on I'm Still Here, movie from 2024 Academy Award Best Picture and Foreign Language Best Picture nominee. Let us know what you think, 818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. Check out our other episodes. We got 300 plus others at orwhatevermovies.com or wherever you get podcasts. And thanks for listening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electrocast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.